Governor Haley, welcome.
Good morning.
Congratulations. I,
Thank you.
of course, had the opportunity to get to know you and your family quite a bit about this time last year in another endeavor, and came away from it incredibly impressed and excited now about this opportunity you'll have to represent our country. I wanted to summarize some of the testimony because it's going to lead to the question that I have to ask. First, in your written statement, you said that in the matter of human rights, I have a clear understanding that it is not acceptable to stay silent when our values are challenged. You also said that in terms of reforming the UN, we need to build an international institution that honors America's commitment to freedom, democracy, and human rights. In your testimony, you have said that you do not believe that sanctions should be removed from Russia without positive actions regarding the actions that led to the sanctions in the first place. You testified as well that you believe that war crimes have been committed in Aleppo by the Russian military. You testified that the Russian government has helped Assad murder his own people. In the Philippines, you acknowledged that the current president of the Philippines has involved in extrajudicial killings that violate human rights. And of course, you acknowledge that the Human Rights Council of the United Nations, you've called into question their legitimacy because of not just their membership, but their pattern of behavior over the last forever. And therefore, I imagine by extension, believe that we should consider returning to the Bush policy of not being a part of it. From your testimony, yet I know you also understand, as you said in your testimony, you have to be able to work with countries all over the world at the Security Council and the General Assembly on critical issues. So I take it and gather from both your testimony, from all of this testimony, that if confirmed as the ambassador to the United Nations, you're going to have to deal with countries whose behavior violates human rights and international law, and yet you believe it's possible to speak truth to those countries and their horrendous human rights records, and yet still negotiate with them on issues of importance at the Security Council when necessary.
Absolutely. I don't think we should ever apologize for the American values, and I don't think we should ever shy away from talking about them. At the same time, I think it's very important that when negotiating with other countries and when we're dealing with them, they know exactly where we stand. They know where we support and agree. They know where we disagree, and they also know what our intended goals are in terms of working together. And that's what I've had to do as governor. That's what you do when you deal with legislators and international officials, and I think that's what we'll be doing there. But I don't think that we have to compromise one to get the other. I think we make sure that we always stand firm and strong for what we believe in.
And on an unrelated topic, in March of 2015 and many times afterwards, our current Secretary of State told this Senate that the Iran nuclear deal would not be legally binding on the United States. Yet, the outgoing administration attempted to use the United Nations, in particular the Security Council, through Resolution 2231, to go around Congress on the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and attempt, as they claim, to create a binding legal obligation under what they claim to be international law related to a flawed Iran nuclear deal. I would first ask, what is your view of this use of the Security Council to go around Congress, and in particular to go around the Senate's constitutional role to provide advice and consent on treaties?
Well, I think I've been on record that I think that it was a huge disappointment. I think that it was created more of a threat, and I think that we are going to have to do a lot of things to fix what's happened.
If confirmed, would you advise the President-elect never to use the United Nations to try to circumvent Congress, especially the Senate, on international agreements?
Yes, I would, because I think Congress and Senate are extremely important that we work together with the UN to make sure that anything that's proposed is always supported by Congress as we go forward.
And this is related to one of your answers, but I think for a point of clarification, because I know you were asked about the recent Security Council resolution with regards to Israel and the Palestinian question, I think you recognize that as part of that agreement, it assumed, for example, that portions of Jerusalem are occupied territory, that portions of Jerusalem are therefore, by definition, settlements. I believe you would agree when I say that Jerusalem is not a settlement.
Right. I agree.
So you continue to see, it's important to understand, and I think that's what the chairman was getting at when he talked about some dispute over the meaning of that resolution, that it in fact assumed and accepted as fact the notion that basically any Israeli presence in Judea and Samaria constitutes a settlement. And so I think that's the key point, and I also think it's not true to say that this is the longstanding policy of the U.S. to somehow try to organize and utilize international organisms to force a negotiation. What has in fact been a bipartisan commitment, and I think certainly what our partners in Israel would like to see, is a negotiation between the two parties involved, with assistance from the international community as a forum, potentially, but certainly not by pre-imposing conditions and the like. And I guess my question, you've already answered this. Had you been the UN ambassador and had been asked to abstain on a vote of this kind, would you have agreed to do so?
I would never have abstained. I don't like when legislators abstain. I certainly think that it has to be a huge exception when you do abstain. I think that that was the moment that we should have told the world how we stand with Israel, and it was a kick in the gut that we didn't.
Well, I thank you, and I just would close by pointing out that the United Nations actually came about as a result of the work of someone from Tennessee, the former senator from Tennessee, Cordell Hull. So it's appropriate that you're chairing this meeting here today. It all comes back to Tennessee.
It always does.